In the silence of the early morning, a devastated young man pushes through the automatic doors of a hospital, carrying a critically ill baby, and with him, secrets that could shake the foundations of a powerful dynasty. His sudden arrival not only shocks the medical staff, but also triggers a series of explosive revelations. Long-buried family secrets, conspiracies disguised as charity, and a dark past that threatens to destroy everything he knows. Follow along to the end and discover if the courage of one solitary man can truly stand against the forces that threaten not only his life, but also the future of those he loves. The digital clock in the lobby of St. Francis Hospital read 3:47. Here, when the automatic doors slid open with a sharp hiss, a young man bursts through them, his stained and torn clothes violently contrasting with the sterile environment of the place. In his arms, a small bundle moves weakly, a baby, wrapped in an improvised blanket, its breathing visibly labored. "Help, someone please, the baby, he needs help." The hoarse and desperate voice of Ethan Carter echoes through the lobby, shattering the usual silence of that hour. The hospital security guards quickly approach, torn between restraining the seemingly unstable young man and assisting him. A more experienced nurse, Mrs. Margaret, is the first to truly grasp the gravity of the situation. With over 20 years of experience in emergencies, she recognizes the signs of a child in danger. "Bring a pediatric stretcher, now," she orders, her firm voice cutting through the initial confusion. "Young man, come with me. What's the baby's name? How old is he?" Ethan, panting and trembling, follows the nurse as a medical team quickly approaches. He's only a few days old. I don't know his name. Please save my brother." The word brother makes Mrs. Margaret hesitate for a moment, but her experience keeps her focused on the emergency. The baby is quickly placed on the stretcher, and the doctors begin to examine him. Dr. Michael Thompson, the on-duty pediatrician, starts assessing the child's vital signs. Low oxygen saturation, elevated temperature. "We need to take him to the neonatal ICU immediately," declares the doctor, already leading the team through the white hospital corridors. Ethan tries to follow, but is gently held back by Mrs. Margaret. "Now you need to help us with some information, dear. Who are you? How did this baby end up with you?" The young man runs his hands through his disheveled hair, his face a mask of anguish and exhaustion. "My name is Ethan Carter. He hesitates, his gaze wandering around the hospital lobby, where onlookers are already gathering. "I am the son of Theodore Carter." The name causes an immediate stir. Theodore Carter, the pharmaceutical magnate, owner of one of the largest companies in the country, hospitalized in that same hospital a few weeks ago. The same Theodore Carter who years ago had publicly disowned and banished his eldest son from his life. "Ethan Carter." A surprised voice comes from behind the reception desk. It's Sarah Johnson, the night shift receptionist who has worked at the hospital for over a decade. You shouldn't be here. Your father left explicit orders." "I don't care about his orders," Ethan interrupts, his voice trembling with emotion. "This baby is my brother, my father's child with a woman named Emily Davis. She worked as a consultant at his company last year. She's missing and the baby was alone, burning with fever." Before Ethan could continue, the elevator doors open and 3 men in dark suits emerge hurriedly. They are the lawyers from Carter Pharmaceuticals, already alerted about the situation. The eldest of them, Dr. Henry Wilson, approaches with a grave expression. "Mr. Carter, please come with us. We have much to discuss." His voice is low but carries undeniable authority. Ethan straightens up, his eyes gleaming with a mix of anger and determination. "I'm not going anywhere until I know how my brother is doing, and there's more. You need to find Emily. She would never abandon her son. Something happened to her, I'm sure of it." Mrs. Margaret watches the scene unfold, noticing the exchanged glances between the lawyers, the way they try to isolate Ethan from the others present. In her years of experience at the hospital, she has learned to recognize when something bigger is at play. Discreetly, she moves toward the neonatal ICU wing, determined to ensure the baby receives the necessary care, regardless of the drama unfolding in the lobby. Dr. Wilson tries again. "Mr. Carter, I understand your concern, but there are protocols to follow. Your father is admitted to this very hospital. and this situation needs to be handled with discretion. Discretion? Ethan laughs, a bitter and weary sound. That's all that matters to you, isn't it? The company's image, the reputation of the great Theodore Carter. Meanwhile, a woman is missing and a baby almost. He stops, swallowing hard. Sarah at the reception watches the scene with growing discomfort. She remembers seeing Emily Davis a few times at the hospital, always at odd hours, always seeming nervous. Now connecting the dots in her mind, she begins to understand why. The tension in the lobby grows thicker when a young doctor rushes in. We need the mother's medical records. There's critical information we need for the child's treatment. Ethan looks directly at the lawyers. Did you hear that? The baby needs help. And I know you know where Emily is. I'm not leaving here until I find out the truth. The first rays of sunlight begin to filter through the hospital windows, illuminating Ethan's determined face. Somewhere on the upper floors, in a luxurious suite, Theodore Carter rests, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the lobby. Or at least that's what everyone thinks. While the baby was receiving care in the neonatal ICU, Ethan was led to a small waiting room on the third floor. Dr. Henry Wilson and his assistants surrounded him like watchful shadows, but the young man barely noticed their presence. His mind was filled with memories of the past few days, trying to piece together the complex puzzle that had brought him there. A week earlier, Ethan had received an enigmatic message on his phone. It was from Emily Davis, a woman he had only briefly met during his last visits to his father's company before his estrangement from the family. The message was short, but unsettling. Ethan, I need your help. Your father. There's something you need to know. I don't trust anyone else. At first he hesitated. The last 3 years since his expulsion from the family had been tough, working as a freelance photographer, living in a small apartment in the suburbs. The fallout with his father had been public and painful after Ethan questioned the company's dubious practices during a board meeting. Mr. Carter, Dr. Wilson's voice brings him back to the present. We need to discuss how to handle this delicate situation. Ethan looks up, meeting the lawyer's cold gaze. Delicate? A woman is missing and my newborn brother was abandoned in an empty apartment. What exactly are you trying to hide? At that moment, Mrs. Margaret enters the room, her face filled with concern. The baby is stable now, but she hesitates, glancing at the lawyers. We found something interesting in the hospital records. Emily Davis was admitted here for childbirth 5 days ago in the VIP wing. This information makes Ethan stand up abruptly. At this hospital? The same hospital where my father is admitted, and no one thought this was relevant? Dr. Wilson clears his throat, visibly uncomfortable. Mr. Carter, your concern is understandable, but there are confidentiality protocols. Confidentiality? Ethan interrupts him. Emily came to me because she was scared. She discovered something big involving my father and this hospital, and now she's disappeared, leaving our brother alone. Sarah, the receptionist, who had come up to deliver some documents, stops at the door upon hearing the conversation. She remembers something important. Emily used to come every Wednesday, she says, drawing everyone's attention. She had regular meetings with Dr. Alexander Reed, the hospital's financial director. The lawyers exchange worried glances, and Ethan realizes they've touched on something significant. Dr. Alexander Reed was known for managing the large donations that Carter Pharmaceuticals made to the hospital, donations that had increased significantly over the past year. Where is Dr. Reed now? Ethan asks, his voice filled with suspicion. Traveling, one of the assistant lawyers quickly replies. International conference, just keep... Margaret, who hadn't yet left the room, adds, It's strange. He passed away unexpectedly on the night Emily was admitted for delivery. Ethan feels his heart race. The connections begin to form in his mind. His father, hospitalized with a mysterious condition for weeks. Emily uncovering something in the hospital's finances. Dr. Reed disappearing on the same night as the delivery. And now Emily is missing and the baby abandoned. I need to see my father, Ethan declares suddenly. Impossible, replies Dr. Wilson. Your father is in a delicate state and left specific instructions. I don't care about his instructions. There's something much bigger going on here, and I'm sure he's at the center of it all. At that moment, a young nurse who had been caring for the baby rushes into the room. Sorry to interrupt, but We found this among the baby's belongings. She holds out a small flash drive attached to a chain. Ethan recognizes it immediately. It was identical to the one Emily had nervously shown during her last visits to the company. Before anyone could react, he takes it from the nurse's hand. "That belongs to the Carter family," Dr. Wilson interjects quickly. "We need to—" "No," Ethan interrupts, gripping the flash drive tightly. "This belongs to the truth, and I'm going to find out what it is." Outside the room, the hospital begins to wake up to another day. In the hallways, staff exchange whispers about the drama unfolding. In the neonatal ICU, the tiny baby sleeps, unaware of the conspiracies surrounding its existence. And on the 10th floor, in the most luxurious room of the hospital, Theodore Carter opens his eyes as if sensing that his past has finally caught up with him. With the flash drive safely in his pocket, Ethan sought refuge in the hospital cafeteria. The place, still empty at that hour of the morning, offered a moment of relative calm to gather his thoughts. He ordered a coffee and turned on his laptop, a gift from his former life as an executive at Carter Pharmaceuticals. His hands trembled slightly as he inserted the flash drive. "May I sit?" The soft voice startled him. It was Amanda Smith, the young nurse who had found the flash drive. Her eyes conveyed a mix of concern and curiosity. Ethan nodded, grateful for a presence that didn't seem hostile. "How's my brother?" "Stable. The fever is subsiding," she replied, sitting down. She hesitated for a moment before continuing. "There's something you need to know. I took care of Emily during her delivery. She was scared but lucid. She asked me to keep some things in case something happened." Ethan's heart raced. On the laptop screen, a series of folders appeared. Most were encrypted, but one, titled "For Ethan," opened easily. "Emily told me about you," Amanda continued, her voice low. "About how you were the only one who questioned the company's practices. She trusted you." Inside the folder, Ethan found dozens of emails and documents. He began reading quickly, his face paling with each new discovery. Emily had been much more than a simple consultant. She was a financial auditor specializing in corporate fraud. "My God," he murmured, scrolling through the files. "The donations to the hospital. They were a front for money laundering," Amanda finished. "Emily discovered everything. The $1 million donations from Carter Pharmaceuticals to the hospital weren't just philanthropy. The money was funneled back to the company through inflated contracts with shell suppliers." Ethan kept digging through the files, finding detailed spreadsheets, suspicious contracts, and a complex web of financial transactions. Among the documents, something caught his eye. Photos of secret meetings between his father, Dr. Alexander Reed, and other key figures from the hospital and the company. "That's why she started getting close to my father," Ethan concluded, the pieces falling into place. "To understand how deep the scheme went, but then she fell in love with him," Amanda added. "And he with her, apparently. But when she got pregnant, everything changed." An audio file in the folder caught Ethan's attention. It was a recording of Emily, dated 3 days before her disappearance. "Ethan, if you're hearing this, it means my suspicions were right. Your father isn't the true architect of this scheme. There's someone more powerful behind it all, someone who—" The recording was cut off by an error message. Ethan tried to recover it, but without success. "Emily told me about an important meeting," Amanda whispered, glancing nervously around. "The night she was admitted to the hospital, Dr. Reed was furious because she threatened to expose everything. She was afraid they might try to—" The sound of footsteps interrupted their conversation. Dr. Wilson and his assistants entered the cafeteria. "I need to go," Amanda said, quickly standing up. "But look through the files for something about Phoenix Project. Emily mentioned it. Was the key to everything." Ethan barely had time to close his laptop. The lawyers were approaching with determined expressions. "Mr. Carter," Dr. Wilson announced with forced formality, "your father wishes to see you." The surprise nearly made Ethan drop his coffee cup. After 3 years of absolute silence, his father finally wanted a meeting. But why? What had changed? "And there's one more thing," the lawyer continued, his tone now more serious. "We found Emily Davis." Ethan felt his blood run cold. The flash drive in his pocket seemed to weigh a ton, and Emily's interrupted words echoed in his mind. Who was the true architect behind it all? And what secrets did the Phoenix Project hold? As he followed the lawyers toward the elevator, Ethan cast one last glance at Amanda, who nodded discreetly. She would be his eyes and ears at the hospital. The elevator doors closed, and Ethan felt he was about to step into the lion's den. On ice, the 10th floor, his father awaited him, along with truths that could change everything. The 10th floor of St. Francis Hospital was a world apart. Silent hallways adorned with original artwork, Italian marble floors, and a privileged view of the city through the massive windows. Ethan observed it all with a mix of familiarity and disgust. This was the luxury he had rejected when he confronted his father 3 years ago. Standing in front of room 1001, Ethan took a deep breath. Dr. Wilson cleared his throat beside him. Your father is fragile. Try not to upset him. Ethan ignored the comment and entered. The room was spacious, like an apartment, with an anteroom, leading to the main bedroom. Theodore Carter was sitting in an armchair near the window, wearing a navy blue silk robe. Even ill, he maintained the proud posture that characterized him. So, you've come back, Theodore said, his voice hoarser. Then Ethan remembered. After trying to destroy everything I've built. I didn't come for you, Ethan replied, standing his ground. I came for my brother, and for Emily. A heavy silence filled the room. Theodore gestured for the lawyers to leave, surprising everyone. When they were alone, his expression shifted subtly. Emily is safe, he finally said. She's in a private clinic receiving special care. Special care? Ethan took a step forward, outraged. She uncovered your illegal dealings with the hospital, and now she's being held captive. You've always been quick to judge, Ethan, Theodore sighed, seeming genuinely weary. Emily suffered complications during childbirth. She's under observation for her own safety. And why was the baby abandoned? It was a misunderstanding. The nurse who was supposed to care for him. Theodore hesitated, something rare for his usually controlled demeanor. There was confusion with the shifts. Ethan laughed bitterly. Confusion? Like the confusion in the financial spreadsheets Emily uncovered? How about the convenient disappearance of Dr. Reed? Theodore's face hardened. You don't know anything, Ethan. You're diving into waters that are way too deep. Then explain Project Phoenix to me. The mention of the name visibly paled Theodore. For the first time, Ethan saw fear in his father's eyes. Where did you hear that name? Does it matter? What are you hiding, Dad? What's so important that it justifies all this scheme? Theodore stood up with difficulty, walking toward the window. The city stretched out below them, beginning to wake up with the first rays of sunlight. Project Phoenix isn't what you think, he finally said. It's not about money. It's about power, about control, and about your mother. Ethan felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. His mother had left when he was a child, supposedly in a car accident. Theodore had never mentioned her name again. What does my mother have to do with this? She didn't have an accident, Ethan. She discovered something. Something about the true nature of Carter Pharmaceuticals' research. Something that Emily also discovered. At that moment, a nurse hurriedly entered the room. Mr. Carter, it's time for your medication. Theodore made a gesture of irritation. Not now. These are direct orders from Dr. Reed, the nurse insisted, her tone firm. Dr. Reed isn't at the hospital, Ethan interjected. He's supposedly traveling. The nurse froze for a moment, her gaze shifting between father and son. I received the instructions before his trip. Ethan noticed something familiar about the medication bottle she was holding. The logo was similar to a document he had seen on Emily's flash drive, an experimental project from Carter Pharmaceuticals. Dad, what exactly is this medication? Before Theodore could answer, Dr. Wilson burst into the room. Ethan, Emily woke up. She's asking for you. Ethan's heart raced. Emily was conscious. She could finally reveal the truth. But as he looked at his father, he saw something in his eyes, a mix of pleading and warning. Ethan, Theodore called out as he was already at the door. Some truths are more dangerous than lies. Remember, Your mother also thought she was doing the right thing. Leaving the room, Ethan felt his head spinning. The Phoenix Project, his mother, the mysterious medications, Emily, everything was connected somehow. But what was the true cost of these revelations? In the hallway, Amanda was waiting for him with news about the baby, and in Ethan's pocket, the flash drive still held secrets that could change everything, or cost him everything. The private clinic where Emily was staying was on the top floor of a building adjacent to the hospital. Ethan followed Amanda through the sterile hallways, his mind still processing the conversation with his father. The words about his mother echoed in his head, mingling with the recent discoveries about the Phoenix Project. "Ethan," Amanda whispered, stopping abruptly. "Before we go in, there's something you need to know. Emily is different. She's conscious, but she seems confused, like there are blocks in her memory." "Blocks?" Ethan frowned. "What kind of treatment is she receiving here?" Amanda glanced around nervously before answering. "The doctors say it's a new protocol for postpartum stress developed by Carter Pharmaceuticals, but I've never seen anything like it before." As they entered the room, Ethan found Emily sitting in an armchair, staring out the window. She was paler than he remembered, her long black hair contrasting with the pallor of her skin. When she saw him, her eyes widened in recognition. "Ethan." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You came, the baby, how is my son?" "He's fine now," Ethan approached, sitting beside her. "Emily, we need to talk. About the Phoenix Project, about my father, about everything you discovered." Emily closed her eyes, her hands trembling slightly. "The Phoenix Project, yes, I remember. The files, the tests, the volunteers." She paused, pressing her temples as if in pain. "What volunteers, Emily? What do you remember?" "Your mother," she murmured, surprising Ethan. "She was in, say the files, participant number 1 in the Phoenix Project. She didn't have an accident, Ethan. She discovered something in the research and then—" Emily stopped again, her face twisted in confusion. Amanda approached with a glass of water, but Emily refused it with a gesture. "They're giving me something," she whispered, "something that makes me forget. But I left clues. On the flash drive. You need to look for Aurora." "Aurora?" Ethan asked, leaning closer. "It's the real name of the Phoenix Project, a neuropharmacology research program. Mind control, Ethan. They developed drugs that can—" She stopped, her eyes widening in panic. "Dr. Reed! He's here!" Ethan turned around quickly, but there was no one at the door. When he looked back at Emily, she seemed different. Her gaze was vacant, distant. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice now monotone. "I think I need to rest. I'm very tired." Amanda pulled Ethan out of the room. This is how it happens. She has moments of clarity, and then it's like something pulls her back. In the hallway, Ethan took the flash drive out of his pocket. "Aurora," he murmured. "We need to figure out what's in these encrypted files." "I can help with that." A familiar voice surprised them. It was Sarah, the receptionist. "Before working at the hospital, I was a systems analyst. And there's more. I found something in the hospital's old files about your mother, Ethan." At that moment, Amanda's phone buzzed. It was a message from the neonatal ICU. The baby was having strange reactions to the medications. "Ethan," Amanda said, her voice urgent, "I think they're testing something on your brother, the same drugs they're using on Emily." Ethan's heart raced. His father, his mother, Emily, the baby. All the pieces were starting to connect in a terrifying puzzle. The Phoenix Project wasn't just about money or power. It was about something far more sinister. "Sarah, can you access those files?" Ethan asked, handing her the flash drive. "I can try, but I'll need time and a safe place." "Use my office in the basement," Amanda offered. "No one will look for us there." As they descended into the hospital's basement, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about his father's words. Some truths are more dangerous than lies. Now he was beginning to understand the true meaning of that warning. In the pocket of her lab coat, Amanda carried a sample of the medication they were giving to Emily. On the flash drive, the secrets of Project Aurora waited to be revealed. And somewhere in the hospital, Dr. Reed wasn't as absent as everyone thought. Amanda's room in the basement was small but cozy. with several plants scattered around the corners, a surprising contrast to the coldness of the rest of the hospital. Sarah sat at the table, focused on Ethan's laptop, while he and Amanda watched anxiously. "These files have sophisticated protection," Sarah murmured, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "But there's a familiar pattern. It looks like something Carter Pharmaceuticals used in their internal systems." Ethan leaned closer to the screen. "How do you know that?" "Because I worked there," Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off the screen. "In the IT department before the Great Purge." Great Purge? That's when your father restructured the entire company about 15 years ago, after what happened to your mother. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. 15 years ago, exactly when his mother had suffered the accident. "Got it," Sarah suddenly exclaimed. On the screen, dozens of files began to open. What they saw left them speechless. Project Aurora was much larger and older than they had imagined. Started back in the 90s, it was a secret research project on neural manipulation through pharmaceutical compounds. The documents detailed experiments with volunteers, people who were given experimental drugs capable of altering memories and controlling behaviors. "My God," Amanda whispered, reading over Sandra's shoulder. "They were developing a way to reprogram people." "Not just reprogram," Ethan replied, his voice trembling as he read a specific report. "They wanted to create a form of total control. Drugs that could selectively erase memories, implant new ones, control emotions." Sandra opened a folder labeled Phase 1, Helen Carter. Ethan's heart stopped. It was his mother's name. "Your mother was a researcher on the project," Sandra explained, quickly scanning the contents. "She wasn't a volunteer initially. She was one of the lead scientists. But when she discovered the true purpose of the research, they turned her into a test subject," Ethan finished, his voice filled with anger. "And now they're doing the same to Emily." Amanda, who had stepped away to check on the baby, returned with troubling news. "Ethan, your brother's tests. There's something strange in his blood, traces of a substance I can't identify." "Let me see that," Sandra requested, analyzing the results on the computer. "This formula, it's in the Project Aurora files. It's a modified version of the original drug, coded as Morpheus." "Are they testing it on the baby?" Ethan asked, horrified. "Not exactly," Sandra replied, pulling up more information. "From what I'm seeing here, the drug was administered to Emily during pregnancy. They're studying the transgenerational effects of the compound." At that moment, a video file caught Ethan's attention. It was a security recording from Carter Pharmaceuticals' lab, dated the night his mother supposedly had the accident. In the video, she appeared to be arguing heatedly with someone. Dr. Alexander Reed, 15 years younger. "So Reed has been involved in this from the beginning," Ethan murmured. "And now he's mysteriously disappeared, just as Emily started investigating." "No," Amanda interrupted, her eyes fixed on her tablet. "He hasn't disappeared. I just saw his car entering the hospital parking lot." Panic filled the room. If Reed was back, Emily was in danger. And so was the baby. "We need to act fast," Ethan declared, quickly copying the files. "Amanda, can you transfer my brother to another hospital?" "Not without authorization," she replied, "but I can make sure no suspicious medication reaches him. And I can access the security system," Sarah added. "Monitor Reed's movements." Ethan glanced at the clock. It was almost 11 a.m. In a few hours, the hospital's administrative board would have their monthly meeting. His father, even while ill, would surely join via video call. It was the perfect opportunity to expose everything. "There's one more thing you need to see," Sarah said, opening one last file. Project Aurora wasn't just about mind control. They were developing something even bigger, something called the Requiem Protocol. Before she could explain further, an alert sounded on Amanda's computer. The security cameras showed Dr. Reed heading toward the elevator, directly to the floor where Emily was staying. The race against time had begun. Time seemed to move faster as Ethan, Amanda, and Sarah devised a plan of action. On the monitor, they could see Dr. Reed was waiting for the elevator, his tense posture betraying his intentions. "Sarah, what exactly is the Requiem Protocol?" Ethan asked as they prepared to leave the room. It's the final phase of Project Aurora, she replied, her eyes still fixed on the computer screen. According to these files, it's not just about controlling individual minds. They've developed a compound that can be administered on a large scale through the water supply or air conditioning system. Amanda gasped. That's why the donations to the hospital? They were using the institution as a testing lab. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. And Dr. Reed isn't just a researcher. He's the true architect of all this. Your father, Ethan, was just the public face, the financier. Ethan felt his stomach churn. And my mother found this out? Yes, but there was more. Helen found evidence that they were already testing early versions of the compound in hospitals and nursing homes. Vulnerable people who wouldn't be questioned if they started exhibiting strange behaviors or memory loss. Amanda's phone buzzed. It was a message from the neonatal ICU. The baby is showing signs of withdrawal. We need to intervene now. You two go to the ICU, Ethan decided. I'll go to Emily. Ethan, it's too risky, Amanda protested. Reed isn't alone. There are security guards with him. I have an idea, Sarah interjected, typing quickly. I can lock the elevator between floors. That will give us a few minutes. In the hallway, they split up. Amanda and Sarah headed to the neonatal ICU, while Ethan took the emergency stairs, quickly climbing the floors. In his pocket, the flash drive with the evidence weighed heavily like lead. When he reached Emily's floor, Ethan found the hallway strangely empty. Through the security cameras on his phone, courtesy of Sarah's access, he could see Reed still trapped in the elevator, gesturing furiously on the phone. Emily's room was quiet when he entered. She was asleep, or seemed to be, connected to several monitors. Ethan approached cautiously. Emily, he whispered, we need to get out of here. Her eyes opened slowly, clearer than before. Ethan, I knew you'd come back. They're coming, aren't they? Yes, but we have time. Can you walk? Emily nodded, trying to sit up. The Requiem protocol, did you figure it out? Partially, we know about the tests, about the mass distribution plan, but there's still something I don't understand. Why now? Why did you get close to my father at this exact moment? Because, Emily took a deep breath, her voice trembling, they're ready for the final phase. The hospital is just the beginning. They have contracts with water systems in multiple cities. And your father, he's no longer useful to them. What do you mean? His illness isn't natural, Ethan. They're slowly eliminating him, testing a new variation of the compound. When it happens, the company will fall under the full control of the board, of Dr. Reed. A noise in the hallway interrupted them. The elevator had started working again. We don't have much time, Ethan whispered, helping Emily to her feet. There's an emergency exit at the end of the hallway. At that moment, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Amanda. Baby stable. We found something in the tests. You need to see this. Requiem protocol has a flaw. Before they could reach the door, they heard voices approaching. Emily gripped Ethan's arm. There's something you need to know, she said quickly. About your mother. She wasn't the first test subject in the project. There was someone else, someone who survived the experiments and developed a natural resistance to the compound. Who? Your real mother, Ethan. Helen Carter was your adoptive mother. Your biological one, but she's still alive. And she is the key to defeating the Requiem protocol. The voices were closer now. Ethan could hear the heavy footsteps of the guards, the authoritative tone of Dr. Reed. On his phone, more urgent messages from Amanda and Sarah flashed. Time was running out, and Emily's revelations had changed everything. It wasn't just about saving the hospital or exposing a conspiracy. It was about his true origin, about a plan for mass control, and about a race against time to prevent the Requiem protocol from becoming reality. With the guards' footsteps growing nearer, Ethan and Emily needed to act fast. The hallway offered only two options, the emergency exit or a door leading to the special treatment wing. Emily, still weak from the medication, gripped Ethan's arm. The special wing, she whispered. There's something there you need to see. Following his instincts, Ethan helped Emily to the door of the special wing. Using the badge Amanda had lent him, they gained access. The environment was different from the rest of the hospital, more secluded, with fewer security cameras and highly monitored individual rooms. Room 8, Emily indicated, her voice nearly failing. She's there. Ethan felt his heart race. She who? Your real mother, Diana Adams. The name struck Ethan like a bolt of lightning. Diana Adams was a legend in scientific circles, a brilliant researcher who had mysteriously disappeared 30 years ago, shortly after making groundbreaking discoveries in neuroscience. Approaching room 8, Ethan saw through the small window a middle-aged woman with graying hair and intensely green eyes, the same eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. She was sitting in an armchair reading a book, seemingly calm despite her confinement. She's not here as a patient, Emily explained quickly. She's under permanent observation. Her genetic code is unique. She developed total immunity to the compounds of Project Aurora. That's why they keep her here, studying her, trying to understand why the drugs don't work on her. And this immunity, Ethan began, a sudden realization hitting him. It was passed on to you genetically, Emily completed. That's why your father kept you away from the company. It wasn't just because of your whistleblowing. He found out that you're also naturally immune to the compound's effects. You're a threat to the entire project. At that moment, Ethan's phone buzzed again. It was Sarah. The board meeting has been moved up by 30 minutes. Reed is presenting the requiem. Protocol for final approval. Ethan, Emily grabbed his arm urgently. The baby, your brother. The tests Amanda found show that he also inherited the immunity. That's why he's having adverse reactions to the medications. They can't control him as they planned. A noise in the hallway alerted them. Dr. Reed and his security team were getting closer. Ethan glanced again at the room where his biological mother was and made a decision. Sarah, he said into the phone, I need you to do something. Send all the evidence. We've gathered to the press, all of it, and then broadcast the board meeting live to every computer in the hospital. But that will cause total chaos, Sarah replied. Exactly. It's the only way to expose everything. Emily, who was watching the hallway, whispered urgently, Ethan, there's more. The Requiem protocol isn't just about mind control. They've discovered that people with our genetic mutation are naturally resistant to various diseases. They're developing a way to use that. Before she could finish, the door to the special wing opened. Dr. Reed entered, followed by 2 security guards. His usually composed face showed signs of tension. Ethan, he said, his voice artificially calm. What a coincidence to find you here. I see you've already met your special guest. Through the small window, Ethan saw that Diana had stood up, watching the scene with interest. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a silent understanding. It's over, Reed, Ethan declared. Right now, all the evidence of Project Aurora is being sent to the press. The Requiem protocol will never happen. The doctor smiled, a cold and calculated smile. You're just like your mother. Ethan, brilliant but naive. Do you really think we didn't prepare for this possibility? In 15 minutes, the board will approve the protocol. In an hour, the hospital's new water distribution system will be activated. And in a day, he was interrupted by a deafening alarm. The emergency lights began to flash and a mechanical voice announced, Attention! Evacuation protocol activated. All patients must be removed immediately. It was Amanda. She had triggered the fire alarm, creating the necessary chaos for her escape. But Ethan knew they couldn't just run away. Not now. Not when they were so close to exposing the whole truth. The door to room 8 opened slowly, and Diana Adams stepped out, facing Dr. Reed with a look that blended defiance and determination. Chaos had taken over St. Francis Hospital. The fire alarm turned the orderly hallways into a maze of panicked people running in every direction. Amid the confusion, Diana Adams remained calm, her green eyes fixed on Dr. Reed. 30 years, Alexander, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. 30 years you kept me here studying my DNA, trying to replicate my immunity. And for what? To create your own twisted version of human evolution? Reed took a step forward, ignoring the alarm and the commotion. You never understood the true magnitude of what we're doing, Diana. The Requiem Protocol isn't about control, it's about perfection. Imagine a world where we can reprogram the human brain to eliminate diseases, addictions, destructive behaviors. At the cost of free will, Ethan interjected, positioning himself beside his biological mother. Turning people into puppets? At the cost of chaos and imperfection, Reed replied. Your father understood that from the beginning, Ethan. That's why he funded our research. But then he became sentimental, especially after he found out about you and Diana. Emily, who had leaned against the wall for support, spoke up. That's why you started poisoning him slowly, because he threatened to expose everything. At that moment, Ethan's phone vibrated. It was a message from Sarah. The board meeting broadcast has been hacked. All the hospital's TVs and computers are connected. It's time. Ethan smiled. You're right about one thing, Reed. This moment is indeed about evolution, but not the way you planned it. As if on cue, all the screens in the hallway, the nursing, monitors, the waiting room TVs, flickered and began displaying the boardroom. The shocked faces of the board members filled the screens. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Sarah's voice echoed through the speakers. Before you vote on the core Requiem Protocol, there is some information you need to know. Documents began appearing on the screens. Reports of illegal experiments, records of patients used as test subjects without consent, suspicious financial transfers, and most strikingly, the video of Helen Carter, Ethan's adoptive mother, confronting Reed 15 years ago. Turn it off, Reed shouted at the security guards, but it was too late. The broadcast was being streamed simultaneously to all the hospital's devices, as well as to news channels and social media. Diana stepped forward. Let me tell you the real story of Project Aurora, Alexander, about how you discovered that my DNA had a unique mutation that made me immune to your mind control drugs, how you kept me imprisoned for decades, trying to replicate that immunity, how you separated mother and son because you found out that Ethan had inherited the same protection. And now my brother too, Ethan added, a new generation immune to your control. The security guards, hearing the revelations, began to step back, unsure of which side they should be on. Downstairs, they could hear the commotion growing as more people watched the broadcast. You don't understand, Reed said, his composure beginning to crack. The world needs order, control. Humanity's chaos is destroying everything. The Requiem Protocol is the only solution. No, a new voice emerged from the hallway. It was Theodore Carter in his wheelchair, pushed by Amanda. The only solution is the truth, Alexander. It's over. Reed's face paled as he saw his former partner. Theodore, what are you doing here? Fixing my mistakes, Theodore replied, his voice weak but resolute. Helen tried to warn me years ago, but I didn't want to listen. Emily tried to show me the truth, and I almost made the same mistake again. On the screens, the board members watched in horror as the revelations unfolded. One of them stood up. This meeting is adjourned. All projects at Carter Pharmaceuticals will be audited immediately. Ethan looked at Diana, seeing in her not just the scientist who had sacrificed everything to stop a terrible project, but the mother who had been forced to abandon him to protect him. Then he looked at Theodore, the man who, despite his mistakes, had finally chosen the right side of history. The fire alarm finally fell silent, leaving only the sound of revelations echoing through the hospital corridors. The Requiem Protocol was exposed, but the story wasn't over yet. There was still a family to rebuild and truths to process. Amanda appeared again in the hallway. Ethan, you need to come to the ICU. Your brother. There's something you need to see. 3 days had passed since the revelations that shook St. Francis Hospital. The morning dawned calmly, unlike the turbulence of the past few days. Ethan watched the sunrise through the window of the neonatal ICU, where his brother, now officially named Gabriel, slept peacefully. Amanda entered the room quietly, carrying the latest test results. The results confirmed what we suspected, she said with a smile. Gabriel's DNA shows the same genetic variation that you and Diana have. His natural immunity to the compound from Project Aurora is even stronger. It's incredible how nature finds its own paths, Diana Adams remarked. As she entered the room, after 30 years of forced seclusion, she was still readjusting to freedom. but her eyes sparkled with renewed vitality whenever she looked at Ethan Carter and Gabriel. Emily Davis, now recovered from the effects of the drugs, joined them. The investigators have finished analyzing all the documents. The scope of Project Aurora, it was larger than we imagined. There were branches in hospitals across several cities. But now it's over, Ethan stated, gently touching his sleeping brother's hand. Carter Pharmaceuticals is being completely restructured. Sarah Johnson appeared at the door carrying her laptop. I just received the latest updates. Dr. Alexander Reed and his key collaborators have been removed. The board has appointed an external committee to oversee the company's transition. And my father? Ethan asked, turning to Amanda Smith. He's responding well to the detox treatment, she replied. The doctors believe that in a few weeks he'll fully recover from the effects of the poisoning. Diana stepped closer to Ethan, placing a hand on his shoulder. Your father made serious mistakes, but in the end he chose the right path. His decision to expose everything to the board was crucial. Just like Helen Carter, Ethan added softly. She tried to protect me all these years, even though she wasn't my biological mother. She gave her life trying to expose the truth. And now she can rest in peace, Emily said, moving closer to Gabriel's crib. The truth has finally come to light. At that moment, Theodore Carter entered the ICU, still in his wheelchair, but looking much better. The treatment to reverse the effects of the poisoning was working. Ethan, he called, his voice carrying an emotion he rarely showed. Diana, there's so much I need to say to both of you. We have time now, Dad, Ethan replied, surprising himself with how naturally the word Dad came out. We have all the time in the world. Diana smiled, a smile that carried decades of pain but also hope. Yes, we have time to rebuild, to get to know each other again, to be the family we should have been. Amanda discreetly began guiding the others out of the room, giving the reconnecting family some privacy. Before leaving, she exchanged a meaningful look with Ethan. In just a few days, they had gone from strangers to confidants, united by a battle that had changed their lives forever. Gabriel chose that moment to wake up, his green eyes, the same as Diana's and Ethan's, opening to the world. A world that, thanks to the courage of so many, would be freer and truer than the one planned by Project Aurora. You know, Emily said, pausing at the door, when I discovered the whole truth about the project, I thought I was alone, that no one would believe me, but I ended up finding an entire family of allies. Ethan looked around the room, his biological mother finally free, his father seeking redemption, his sister-in-law and brother, symbols of a new beginning. And around him, the friends he had made on this journey. Amanda, Sarah, each contributing to uncovering the truth. The sun was already high in the sky, filling the room with golden light. In the hallway, St. Francis Hospital returned to its normal, routine but transformed by the exposure of the truth. The investigations would continue, other revelations would come, but the most important thing was already there. A reunited family, secrets exposed, and the chance for a fresh start. Gabriel let out a small yawn, stretching his tiny arms toward Ethan. Diana stepped closer, silent tears streaming down her face as she watched her son and grandson together for the first time. This is how it should have been, Theodore said, softly. This is how it will be from now on. Ethan cradled his brother in his arms, feeling the precious, gentle weight of new life. The past couldn't be changed, the losses, the separations, the lies, but the future lay open before them, bright as the sunlight streaming through the window. Welcome to the family, Gabriel, he whispered to the baby. A family built not just by blood but by truth, for courage, for love. And so, on the 10th floor of St. Francis Hospital, where the entire story had begun, a new chapter was starting. No longer a tale of secrets and manipulations, but one of redemption, reconnection, and above all, hope.